You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome. You are listening to Watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. Well, is 2023 going to be the year of the white-collar recession, or is it going to hit all aspects of the economy equally, or some more than others? What about housing? What about manufacturing? With us now, Eddie Yoon. Eddie, great to have you back on the show. So what do you see in this upcoming recession, or perhaps we're already in the recession and nobody's admitted it yet?
Yeah, it does look like, Kerry, that some tough times are ahead, whether it is fundamentally driven or Fed raising rates, that's going to just, make it reality, right? But my general reading of the tea leaves is that 2022 was the post-COVID party. Everybody was happy and excited to finally be able to resume their lives. Travel was up. If you look at in the last 4 months, the percentage of travelers as calculated by TSA in 2022 was about 95% of 2019 levels. So almost back to kind of pre-COVID levels. Consumer sentiment has been generally positive and spending as well. But what's interesting is we're seeing the canary in the coal mines in terms of layoffs. So, one specific data point, obviously Amazon, still hiring 150,000 temporary workers for the holiday season. That's no different than last year, Kerry. But they laid off 10,000 corporate employees, about 3% of its workforce, the largest corporate staff cut. Meta's cut 13% of its employees. Twitter famously has laid off 50% of its employees. And, you look at some folks, there are former insiders at Google who have said something clearly like the search business is so profitable that they could probably get by with laying off 75% of their employees and it wouldn't hit the economics. So you're seeing this kind of excess of knowledge workers, but they're not people who create. There's certainly a coder who can write amazing code is going to continue to be worth their weight in gold. It's the managers of those people, right? And so again, looking at I think the whole Twitter experience, which is a whole another story unto itself, but Elon in particular was targeting people who manage other knowledge workers. He was like, show me the code you created in the last week. If you didn't create anything, that's a bad sign for you, right? So the people who are kind of managing people, especially knowledge workers, are going to be hit very hard, I think, in 2023. Kind of entry levels, hourly folks probably be fine, largely because there's a shortage of those folks. And then you'll start to see carry ripple effects upon ripple effects of if managers of knowledge workers, people get highly compensated or let go, you're going to see the categories that they disproportionately skew towards also hit hard as well. So those are going to be some of the ripple effects that we see in 23.
All right. And so obviously, if you're looking for employment at Twitter, or you were an employee at Twitter who got laid off, well, programmers will find jobs, but the managers and the censors probably going to have trouble, huh?
Yeah. I mean, if you weren't directly creating something, then you're out. It's it's basically the great flattening of the corporate hierarchy, is that, what's often the case is that companies that grow rapidly tend to be flat and fast. And then as they get bigger, they tend, everybody hires a manager that can do 85% of what they can do, but it offloads them. That person hires a manager that is 85% of what they can do, and so on and so forth, right? And that's how you get corporate bloat. And I think what you're going to see is that everybody's seeing this, particularly the private equity sector is looking at what is happening in tech. And you're starting to see the beginnings of PE firms saying, oh, they're licking their chops, saying there's a lot of companies that are going to say, we can cut fat. No one better at doing that than a private equity firm. And they're going to come in and really take a lot of companies private and companies that show weakness in technology and in other sectors like that are going to be hit hard. Like in particular, when you look at the consumer expenditure survey, Kerry, about households that make over $100,000 a year drive about 48% of consumer spending. But when you look at like fees and admissions, that category, so I think entertainment parks and movies, 2/3 of the spending is driven by people who make over 100K. So, not a good time for Bob Iger to go back to Disney is kind of my sense of like, what, obviously there's a whole wide range of reasons for doing that, but that's going to be, I think, a particularly challenging sector. 64% of higher education spending is done by over 100K income workers. And supposedly there was a news article that said Harvard had as many administrators as they have students. So we're not talking professors, right? Not people who teach, people who manage the staff and the like. Like it's unclear to me why they need so many people. 60% of mortgage spending is done by that higher income worker versus 24% of rental properties. Mortgage banks, brokers, they're all going to be hit hard that way. And then 56% of alcohol spending. So if you work in the wine, liquors, craft beer space, you should be worried about this because there's a whole bunch of folks who disproportionately spend there that are in that higher income bracket.
Interesting. So this is kind of a different recession than we ordinarily would encounter, isn't it?
Yes. And it's really quite interesting because like the third wave, so the first wave is if you're a manager of a knowledge worker, better start creating your dust off your resume. Secondly, the second wave is if you are categories that skew to these higher income people, you better watch out that discretionary spending going to pull back, right? Like I mentioned alcohol, like, hey, there's a lot of people that will they stop drinking? No, they'll just drink cheaper stuff, right? And Kirkland, the brand at Costco, the house brand, continues to grow like none other. It's bigger than a lot of branded CPG companies. So people will shift to private label, they'll come down. But the third wave of shifts that I think you'll start to see it in the tail end of 23 is that, we talked about the managers of the knowledge workers being let go. The knowledge workers, the ones who create are going to be like, wait, I'm glad you got rid of my boss. That person wasn't really helping or doing a lot of value. But if I'm so valuable, why am I still working for you? You know what I mean? Like that's the last trend that's going to happen where people are going to say, if I'm a good creator, I'm going to leave corporate America and go out and become a solopreneur or do something on my own, and not have a boss, right? So you look at kind of these two sub trends underneath that are kind of people who are going to become digital creators. So I don't know, Kerry, if you've seen do you know Mr. Beast on YouTube?
Yes.
Yes, right. So he has created a budding burger franchise based on his one amazing YouTube video where he's giving out free hamburgers, and eventually starts giving away money. You're like, what is this madman doing? And then at the end, you say, oh, he's created a burger chain that has no restaurants, but it's all delivery. It's Mr. Beast Burger, right? And it's going to be amazing. Jake Paul made $40 million and is a top 20 boxing earner. He didn't need a boxing federation or Dana White to do that. Like these are all people going direct to the to consumer. They're cutting out the middleman. Look at Mark Cuban's Cost Plus drug company, right? He's just really doing some magical things for consumers saying, I don't need all the middlemen in the way. And even my own publishing business that I do with Christopher Locke and Nicholas Cole, Category Pirates, like I wrote a book with Harvard Business Press. Christopher wrote a book with HarperCollins. We write 1 or 2 books a year and we're doing it direct. We don't really need the legacy publishers because we have, audiences of our own. We have can go direct to consumer via Substack. And I think that you're going to see people, in the same way, Kerry, you don't need a radio station or a network to do what you're doing, right? So I think increasingly people are going to see this and say, if I don't need a manager and I'm creating all this value, why don't I do it directly and capture all the upside myself versus accrue it to some large entity and shareholders that may or may not treat me well in the next recession anyway. So I think you're going to see a great hollowing out of corporate America, and then shifting will move around. So, categories that lean towards home offices, connectivity, webcams. All of these things are going to continue to do quite well in the age of the digital creator and solopreneur.
All right. So we're becoming a nation of podcasters and YouTubers, huh?
Well, sometimes we have a saying, the content about the content is more important than the content itself sometimes, right? You see Tom Brady's going to make more money commenting on football than he ever made playing football. Like that Fox contract is sitting there waiting for him, $35 million a year. So what you said, whether it's the legacy podcasting format or some variant of that, I think you're going to see a lot more creators going forward, and they don't have to be the original creator. They can create content about the creation itself and still do quite well.
Yeah, that's amazing. Brady is going to get $375 million for this.
Yeah, and what does that tell you if the greatest quarterback in history can make more money commenting than playing the game? And the NFL being famously owner friendly and not player friendly, why would you ever want to do that? I think you may see players that say, I'm going to hit the NFL, maybe try to get a ring, but I'm going to get in and out before I get CTE. And then I can start my 50-year career as a broadcaster, YouTuber, podcaster about the game with credibility like that. Like, I think you're going to start to see that where, it's not going to be this doddering old football player who you have to pull off the field. They're going to be walking into the combine thinking media company is the real game here.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting phenomena that you have identified, and I have no doubt that that there's a lot of truth to it. How do you cash in on this trend?
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Goldterra Resource Corp is a gold exploration company that has assembled a highly prospective district-scale land position on the doorstep of the city of Yellowknife in Canada's Northwest Territories. Goldterra is currently focused on expanding and delineating gold resources at the company's Yellowknife City Gold Project with a goal of discovering over 5 million ounces. With ready access to infrastructure and multiple high-grade gold discoveries, Goldterra is on track to re-establishing Yellowknife as one of the premier gold mining districts in Canada. Goldterra trades as YGT in Toronto and YGTFF on the OTC. For more information, go to goldterracorp.com. That's goldterracorp.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
Yeah, so I mean, it's one of the things that we talk about in Category Pirates is like everybody's a creator at some level. Like it's funny to think about going through my career. Like most people will look at you, Kerry, and say, well, how do I get to there? Not realizing that they've been creators all along in their career. I had been building it when I was starting out at the age of 22, 23 and as a consultant. I was building these mini little Excel models that would, automate basic tasks that I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm going to automate it here. I built a model to allow CFOs to combat institutional shareholder services who were complaining about stock option dilution. So I built a model for CFOs that said, if I grow at this rate, who cares how many options I give out because the juice is worth the squeeze. And, and those models were worth quite a bit. I didn't realize it at the time. And so I think my encouragement to people has been just look at the things, the life hacks, the career hacks that you built that have made your life easier. More of you are creators than you realize. And that this day and age, thanks to digital technology, it's easier than ever to go out on your own and start monetizing that.
All right. Well, I can see your point there. It makes complete sense. And one just has to wonder this restructuring of society, of our economy, where it ends, I guess.
Yeah, it won't go one way or the other, right? Because I think if you think about a wide angle lens on history, like, you and I 150 years ago, you would have been a tailor, I would have been a butcher. We were all solo enterprises, right? That kind of personal enterprise was kind of the way that it worked. And I would trade you meat for clothing, and that's kind of how the barter system worked. And then the Industrial Revolution led to the rise of the corporation. And I think this next phase will be a mix of both. It'll be, you may not want to start out trying to be, Kerry Lutz straight out the gate. Maybe you want to work somewhere at a corporation, but as soon as you prove that you can create and add value, you'll be thinking, that's my encouragement to my own kids who are like, I want you to think dual career. Yes, set yourself up to get to wherever, a place where you can be apprenticed and learn your craft, but never forget, you need your name LLC right from the get-go and planning that early on from the outset. And I think you'll see people jump back and forth time and time again as it suits their needs and life stage.
So this kind of solopreneur and really I guess, self-branding expert-based economy where you don't make money off your expertise actually doing it, but actually telling other people, showing you how to do it.
100%, because there's no shortage of education. Like I think that, I was talking about higher education. 64% of it is driven by people who make over 100K. YouTube and Twitter, they're no different in my mind than a Harvard or a Stanford in terms of what specifically you want to learn. Like you want to learn how to read a balance sheet, you can do that on YouTube and on Twitter, right? You want to learn how to sell your own clothing, you can do that on those platforms. And that it's going to be increasingly a question as to, why am I spending this much money on higher ed? And that, when you think about, the $1 trillion education student loan fiasco that we have, is that there's going to be a lot of people who say, maybe I shouldn't be dropping 6 figures plus on a higher education major that doesn't do me any good in the real world. And maybe I should start creating and using that as a means of funding, my solopreneur gig, or, going directly into the workforce. And then maybe I'll cherry pick education as I need it. Like, to me, there's $1 trillion of spending that's up for grabs, that if any company and creator can say, I can educate you better than a 4-year degree, there's going to be a lot of upside for you and a lot of downside for the traditional higher ed institutions out there.
All right. Well, so this kind of thing of no more like general purpose education, it's going to be a lot more customizable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be a lot more, shall we say, specific to the actual individual, right?
Yes. Yes. Some people will still want to go the traditional route, but they're going to be more sanguine about, hey, it's a party, it's an experience, right? I'm paying for a social, it's like a cruise. Like I know what I'm getting, right? But there's gonna be some price correction in that front. But then, as you said, I think that the customization is just beginning, where there are people who love to learn and love school. You probably just distribute it over the course of your life. My father-in-law is 83, as a retired physician, and he's taking an astrophysics course. Why? Just for fun, right? Like I think
Right.
that kind of learning as leisure and entertainment will continue to be an opportunity, but learning for practical application is going to be much more distributed across a wider range of categories than previously exists today.
So it sounds like one of those SWOT type things, strengths, weaknesses. You really have to be constantly evaluating your SWOT, right?
Yes, 100%.
All right. Hey, so your kids, so you have kids, what are you telling them? What are you advising them to do?
Yeah, it's a good question. I tell so my eldest is a freshman in college, and it's been a learning experience, and trying not to overparent or underparent. But Mia's she's very, very interested in digital animation. So that's what she's studying at Purdue now. And they have a great visual effects and animation course. And it was a career, or a college track that I was not considering, as an a Korean American immigrant family, right? Like that's not usually what you think of, but it's very clear that animation has a great tailwind. Like there's going to be way more animated movies and TV shows in the future than there are today. Because largely
Right.
what I've heard is from the pandemic, the Netflixes and studios like animators more than they like actors. They're far less high maintenance, right? But then, you can see that trend, and I'm like, well, that's a great trend. And if people that I've talked to are like, nobody cares where you went to school. They want to see your portfolio. So my whole thing to Mia is, great, get a college experience, but learn what you can and create that portfolio, because your track record is what matters more than your pedigree. And, I think that's been the part of me as a dad. I have 2 more, a junior in high school and a freshman in high school. And I'm trying to be a good student myself of like, hey, what are you into? What are you looking for? The other thing that I've been also instructing them is at Category Pirates, we wrote a book for teenagers 18 kind of side hustles teenagers can do. And the whole premise of it, Kerry, was if you can make 30 grand by the time you're 18 and you stick it in a Vanguard index fund, you'll have plenty of money for retirement. Like the whole thing is backwards, right? And that, and if you don't have to worry about retirement, then the pressure to find a well-paying job and career really comes off of you, right? Like you can choose a nonprofit career because it matters to you, and live kind of paycheck to paycheck because you got a nest egg that's waiting for you in retirement because you did the hard work already, right? So a lot of what I am teaching my kids is resequencing. How do you bank your own safety net? Social Security won't be there for you, right? And 18 or 30 grand for an 18-year-old sounds like a lot. Not really, it can be things that teenagers can do that can earn, disproportionate amounts of money from adults because they know stuff that adults don't, right? So how do I make a TikTok video? Teenagers can help adults do that for their companies. How do I make a great Zoom background? Teenagers can do that for adults, right? There's a whole bunch of things that you can get paid for without having to flip burgers.
All right. Well, interesting times ahead. Eddie, I know people out there are going to want to find out more about you, connect with you on the web. Where do we find you?
You can find me at Twitter at Eddie Woodgrow. You can also find me at Substack at Category Pirates. If you ping me on Twitter, I'm happy to hook up your audience with a free trial, the Category Pirates on Substack, because I think that's where a lot of our thought leadership is going. And it's been a ton of fun to write about, how do we escape from the matrix, is going on in 23. So.
All right. I like it. Hey, if you've got a question for Eddie, shoot us an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Make sure you go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free newsletter. Eddie, it's going to be interesting. We'll see what happens.
Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.